What's going on, y'all? I'm Cam Best. He's Lamby series. We are together 8 cubes. We're here to talk to you about the 8 most important topics in Marvel Snap this week, starting with Kate Bishop, the card that will be releasing on the season pass on Tuesday. She is a 2/3. When you play her, you generate 2 out of 4 potential arrows. Those arrows, of course, are the arrow that goes across to your opponent, a -2 power arrow at 1 cost. An arrow that grapples, a 1/3 that moves the next card you play to the location the arrow is at. And an arrow that is Hawkeye, but only that goes up to 4 power. And an arrow that is Ant-Man, but goes up to 4 power. So those are what Kate Bishop can generate for you. I realize that people are going to be like talking about things in a little bit, people are going to be like, oh, what do you mean? You wanted more detail? Look, that's really what they are. There's Hawkeye arrow, there's Move arrow, there's Ant-Man arrow, and there's Goblin arrow. That's probably what we're going to be calling them. So let's just talk about them like that. Personally, I am a big fan of Goblin arrow. That's not what it's called, but that's what I'm going to call it. The arrow that clogs your opponent is just a freakishly strong card. I am continually struck by the fact that Second Inner seems like they are compelled by some magical force to make clog cards in the early game. One of the big things people asked me early was, do you think it would be broken for Green Goblin to cost 2? And I was like, basically at any sort of power, the answer would be yes. If it made 2 -2 Green Goblin, it'd be super broken. They have made 1 -2 Green Goblin, but it's slapped onto some RNG, so it doesn't happen all the time. What are your thoughts on Clog, the direction things are going, and what Kate Bishop will do to that?
Right, so first thing I want to say is that Kate Bishop is probably like the most interesting card that I've seen since Arishem personally. It's the card that I will want to play in every deck and see what happens. I have some preconceived like ideas of where I want to play the card, but like for the most part, I think you can really fit it. It's a very Nico Minoru card, like
Yeah.
it's a low cost card that it's like low downside to play the card, and the upside is very crazy and very flexible as well. Like we keep talking about all these like clock arrows, goblin arrows, move arrows, or whatever arrows, Hawkeye arrow and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm gonna call it the clock arrow. Goblin arrow is like double syllables, a bit longer, so I'm gonna call it
Oh,
the.
you're really on it. Yeah, that's
I'm
that's
gonna
clever. Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna call it the clock arrow. But yeah, the clock arrow is insane. I think the sheer fact that the clock arrow exists means you can really play this card in any deck, right? Like, because you just have sometimes that one spare energy, and what's so bad about having like one energy -2 power that sends over to your opponent and clocks them, right? It's actually super strong. So I think Kate Bishop will fit very nicely in. Honestly, it fits in every deck. I cannot think of a deck that you don't play. Okay, maybe you don't play it in like Phoenix Force or Tribunal, but other than that, or Hela, yes. But
Yeah.
other than that, every mid-range deck, stuff that does points, Arishem, okay, yeah, honestly, maybe even Arishem, right? Because Arishem sometimes doesn't really use 7 energy on turn 6 very well, right? They want to play a blob, and then what? You play your clock arrow, or your whatever arrow. So this fits in almost everything, and I'm super excited for Kate Bishop. May not be the best season pass card ever, but probably one of the most exciting ones I've seen in a while.
I think my real question is she better than Jeff? And I think that like this bears a little bit of examination as to like why Jeff is so good. I've been thinking about this a lot recently. Part of
Mm,
the reason internal move, like a move that is on a card, is so good compared to everything else you can put on a card is because like when you gain card advantage in Marvel Snap, that's because you invalidated the cards your opponent played on a location. We talk about high
yes.
leverage locations where both of you are investing pretty heavily. Winning those usually means you're going to win another lower leverage location, and that high leverage location is what seals the actual win. When you win a location your opponent invested multiple cards into, you are coming out ahead in a way that normally means you win the game. However, when your opponent is investing Jeff and Nocturne, they're not actually investing. They're not stuck in that high leverage location. And if you end up investing them in a low leverage location, well, they go to the high leverage location. It's just such an incredibly powerful ability to have that I wonder if any card can be better than that. Kate Bishop is the closest I've seen, and the fact that she's in that conversation is scary to me.
Yeah, I just want to add also that I 100% agree on the whole like Jeff Nocturne and even Vision to a certain
Yeah,
extent. These kind of cards, it's basically because the core purpose of Marvel Snap is to win 2 locations, right? These cards are effectively cards you can play at any point in time, but they allow you to reallocate power. So you didn't exactly waste cards in
ever.
locations that you
You
cannot win,
never waste a card. Ever.
Yeah, exactly. I think I honestly don't think you can say that Kate Bishop is like that kind of card. It's just a different kind of card, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know how you can actually compare personally. But I do think that like Kate Bishop will definitely go up there in, like, to me, Nico Minoru is one of the best one drops ever printed, you know. So I feel like this is definitely gonna be up there as well.
Speaking of one drops, the card in the caches is going to be Marvel Boy. Marvel Boy is a 3/2. At the end of every turn, he gives +1 power to up to 3 one drops, which is, this is a card that effectively represents like 14 or maybe more power, right? Like 14 is typically what it's going to be. If, let's say you go Squirrel Girl into Marvel Boy, that is a 14 power 3-drop. And I think people are going to look at that and be like, that is ridiculous. This is going to really put a theory to the test. And I've talked about this theory a couple times before, and it's a theory that was advanced to me by Yo Woody. And the theory goes basically, it's impossible for Zoo to ever be the best deck. It simply cannot happen because there are too many ways that the metagame can move against it. You get Killmongered, okay, the Zoo deck's playing Kyera, you get Enchantress Killmongered, you're done, right? And so I think Marvel Boy is a strong enough card that it will put that to the test in a real meaningful way. If Zoo can ever be the best deck, it will be when this card comes out. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so firstly, I do want to say that every single time like we talk about Zoo, right? Because I've never been the biggest Zoo fan, but I do like to try like Zoo style decks. And like every time I try it, I'm just like, okay, this is nice, but this is fair, you know?
Yes.
So this might push Zoo into the a little bit more unfair category. Because firstly, okay, this card itself, the card, this Marvel Boy itself, is actually no counter, right? Like in a sense, it's not on review, it's not ongoing.
Yeah.
Yes, it does give green power to other one cost cards that can be Killmonger, but this card itself cannot be countered, you know. So you protect the other stuff and this card will just like do its thing. So I feel like this card can potentially push Zoo or any like heavy one cost strategy into the a bit more unfair category. But of course, once again, this is a bit like a Fastos card also that's a bit better, which is the later you draw this card, the worse it obviously gets, right?
Yes.
But obviously, it's not as bad as Fastos in the sense that like if you draw this on turn 4 or 5, it's not horrible. Fastos is horrible on 4 and 5. This one is like okay, you know, if you draw it on 4 and 5. So I feel like I will definitely want to try this card in like zoo based strategies. But of course, if it gets really popular, then people run the Killmonger, and then you need to have like another thing to worry about in your zoo based strategy though. So like another thing I'm thinking about is like the only way this card really makes a lot of sense is if your turn 1 and turn 2 is very often one drop into one drop, that kind of thing. So other than Zoo, is there like other decks? I mean, like there isn't, right? Like who else plays Squirrel Girl? I feel like Squirrel Girl is the one deck that, I mean, sorry, Zoo is the one deck that leverages Squirrel Girl very hard. So this is like for sure in the Squirrel Girl deck. It's just that in any other deck, would you want to play this card? I can't currently think of anything right now.
I've got a suggestion.
Okay.
Thanos?
Oh yeah, they're stones.
Like,
But like,
it doesn't seem like it'd be as good. Like, but what if we could go back to like,
definitely
you know,
not.
you remember when we
Definitely
played Thanos Zoo? What if we could do that again and still probably lose to all the same things normal Zoo does without having the consistency of normal Zoo?
Yeah.
What if we could do that? What if we could do that? No, I really don't know. I think that this is the kind of card that is quite strong but quite counterable. Basically, I think this
Yes.
is kind of perfect design. I think this is a great place to, like, if you're like, I'm worried that the card I'm making is too strong, make it a Zoo card. You'll be, it doesn't matter that this is a 314 if it gets blown up, right? Like, I think that's a really interesting way to approach this. And I think, like we saw with Gilgamesh, right? Gilgamesh, when it was in line with other 5-drops, because it was a Zoo card, was worse. And they had to make it better than other 5-drops. Right now, Gilgamesh is the biggest 5-drop you're reasonably playing most of the time. When you do like Blue Marvel Gilgamesh, it's gonna be like 20, 21 power, right? That's bigger than Devil Dinosaur, that's bigger than Ronin, it's bigger than all that stuff. And it has to be in order to be viable, because otherwise, like, Zoo has a higher requirement from these cards because it is so easy for Zoo to be beaten by other stuff. And I think that that is the kind of card that, like, this is the 3-drop, the Gilgamesh of 3-drops, where it's like, this is just, it's better than other things, but it only goes in here. And because it only goes in here, there's an inherent ceiling on it. On to the meta that we are currently in. I think I would say that the card maybe defining it is Sandman. And I know you've been playing Sandman and Arishem, but I'm talking more about the Sandman straight up decks that are looking for like Patriot Sandman with Brood Abs or Cassandra Abs, good into Arishem, by the way. Or you are looking at like a normal Sandman deck, a more traditional Sandman deck. Most of these decks top out with Sandman into Ultron, which has also seen a little bit of a renaissance as well. And I think that the main thing to point out here is now that every other 5-drop that says no is gone, Sandman is kind of the last man standing, right? And Sandman even is no longer the 5-drop that says no the same way he used to, right? Could you imagine if we had old Sandman with Arishem coming
Yeah,
out?
man.
Jesus. But yeah, even Sandman isn't that guy anymore. Not really, right? And that is, I think, pretty interesting to note. The other thing about Sandman that really strikes me is it's strong, but not painful to play against in the way that Doc Ock was or Leech was, to me at least. Once you know your opponent is playing Sandman, if you're reasonably aware of it, there's stuff you can do about it in a lot of real ways. Like, I think bounce decks even can be good into Sandman. If you know they're playing Sandman, just do all your stuff on turn 5. It's fine. You're going to be fine. And I think that is a cool thing to have. If you're going to have a 5-drop that does what Sandman does, or that does what Doc Ock does, or whatever, if you made me choose between Prof, Doc, Leech, and Sandman, I think Sandman's the one that is the most interesting to play against.
Yeah, so far I haven't seen people, and I'm saying this because recently I actually played a lot more Marvel Snap than I used to play. Fun fact, I'm a very big fan of Sandman in general. Actually, specifically 2 card combinations of Sandman Ultron, because I feel like if you are playing less cards,
Yeah.
like the Ultron is technically the one that fills your entire board, so it's like a 620. Ultron is like a Gilgamesh for Sandman decks if you think about it, because it's like it just fills up everything and gets you like okay, it also counters weird things like the bite, like the Widow's Kiss and stuff like that, so. It is okay. So anyway, not so much about Ultron, but more about Sandman. I think yes, Sandman is one of those like say no cards that isn't really like oppressing. I haven't seen really anyone complain that I hate Sandman right now. Right? They just know that it's there, but no one is really like Sandman is overpowered right now. It's
Yeah.
it's a say no card, but it's not overpowered because let's look at some stuff that like it's in the meta right now. Like let's look at Thena decks. Right? Thena decks on turn 6. What do? They play Kitty plus X. X being like your other big card. But the thing is, you still can play the big card, right? You just can't play the kitty. So you still can play your Dark Hawk, you can still play your Cassandra Nova, you can still play your 5. So like, yes, you lose a bit of power on the Thena, you don't get to play the kitty, but you still get to play the big card, that you want to play alongside the kitty. So I feel like Sandman really only hurts the most when you never see it coming. And I feel like with the way the meta is moving and like people start seeing more Sandman decks. You see people play like more mid-range stuff. You're like, maybe there's a Sandman coming on turn 5. Like you sort of just know. Like I've intuitively been like playing like instead of playing 1 card on turn 5, I've been playing like 2+3 on turn 5 because I sort of know the Sandman might be around. Then I just play the big card on turn 6 instead. So Sandman is like good, but it's not like too oppressive good. And I think that's a good place to be for like control cards.
The other big tip against Sandman is if you're playing a deck with Jeff, do everything you can not to play it. Especially if you're playing like a Thena deck, you're really going to want that Jeff on the final turn of the game so you can play 2 cards and get your Thena proc. I wanted to talk a little bit about Silver Surfer. I have played a decent amount of this deck recently. I was very happy with it. And I am going to advance a theory to you. Silver Surfer is always as good as like the 3 flex slots in it. And what I mean by that is like when Surfer is good, it is good because Killmonger is good. It is good because in previous metas, Mobius is good. And in the current meta, Cassandra Nova is good. Yeah. Silver Surfer is only ever as good as the cards that aren't always in the deck. And that's my theory of Silver Surfer. Because there are cards that are always in the deck, the backbone of the deck, the Brood Abs stuff, right? You have either a Sarah or a Hope Summers to get your extra energy to play multiple cards on the final turn of the game. You have all that stuff is like normal, it's stock. That's what Silver Surfer is. You have your Nova, you have your Forge, all that stuff is guaranteed, right? It's as good as the cards that aren't guaranteed. And I gotta tell you, right now, I am so happy playing Cassandra Nova into Absorbing Man. Like, it's not as good as Brood Abs. It's better against Arishem, but you have another thing to do with Absorbing Man now, which is such a big deal. It's such a big deal to like actually just be like, oh, you know what? I'm able to play multiple cards here and actually do stuff. It's legitimately, I am a fan of Silver Surfer right now.
So this is the funny thing that I want to talk about, which is I agree 100% firstly that like Silver Surfer is only as good as the cards that you play in other decks, correct? Like as like the Nocturnes, the Cassandra Novas. At a point it was the Red Guardian. Now there's like Juggernaut, there's like Cosmos as well. Maybe Copycat, yeah, and maybe in future once like Marvel Boy becomes a thing, then maybe even Killmonger. So like I feel like yes, I agree that Silver Surfer is as good as like the 3 cost cards that you play in whatever other deck. But my question is just that like so the cards that you actually play in the Silver Surfer deck because you want to play a Silver Surfer deck, are they good enough? I'm a bit not so high on that one. I just know that Silver Surfer has a lot of good trees right now, that's for sure.
Yes.
But like if you're running specific trees like Forge Brute and then like Surfer, is it worth those slots? Is it not better to just go Thena, I don't know, Dark Hawk or whatever? So
So
that's my question right there.
the analogy I would give to you is Thena is Silky Smooth and Surfer is that Brood Abs deck. Where it's just like
Mm-hmm.
you're doing roughly similar stuff in terms of points most of the time, except when you do Brood Abs and then they just don't have as many points as you. And it's closer than that
Right.
was. It's closer than that was for sure, because Thena is
Yes.
better at scaling than old Silky Smooth is, because that card is really, really strong. But that relationship, I think, still does exist to me when I've played it. The other case for Surfer is like, okay, when you think about the decks that people are playing, it's mostly Thena, Arishem, Zoo, Sandman. Those are like the other decks that you're reasonably going to be seeing, right? Against Sandman, going Brood Abs is meaningfully powerful. Like, that is a
Yes.
meaningfully strong thing to do. Against a deck like Thena, you are trying to match them points for points, and that's just, it's 2 points decks going at it. We've all played that game before. Against Zoo, you have Killmonger. Against Arishem, you have Cassandra Absman. And those are like the 4 decks, and not one of them is like, oh, I really don't want to see that. Oh, I always lose if that happens. You have game in every single matchup, favorable game. Like you have lines in every single matchup where there is a possibility that you are like very, very favored in that game. And I think that's actually kind of meaningful, because I don't think I've been able to say that about Silver Surfer in like a year. Like, it's been a long
Yeah.
time.
Actually, through the entire conversation, I was like building a surfer deck in my head, and I don't know how to explain this now. And because I also haven't actually tested it yet, but I feel like my 12 card in the surfer, I want to play a 6 drop in the surfer deck. Like I just feel like I want to play like one big card that has nothing to do with Surfer, because like we did talk about like Surfer being as good as like the cards you don't actually play in the Surfer deck, right? Like the Nocturnes, the Cassandra Novas and whatever. So like I feel like I want to have a Surfer deck that can, on turn 6, regardless of whether I have enough trees on the board or not, play a big thing that can win the game. So not sure if that makes like a lot of sense. It's just something that I thought of in my head. Like I would like to see that. I don't know how I want to do it though, but I just thought of it randomly.
It's a
So yeah.
thought, especially in the world where people are playing all that Sandman, right?
Yeah, exactly,
Like that
exactly.
makes
Yeah.
that makes some sense to me. I think that like if
Mm.
you're doing that though, you're probably better off just playing the Patriot Sandman deck if that's the
Correct.
direction you want to
Yeah.
go, which is fine. I've got nothing against that, because the Patriot Sandman deck has a lot of the same good things that Surfer has going for it. Like, you have Cassandra Nova Absman for the Arishem matchups. You are a Sandman deck. You have this this big 6 drop coming down at some point. Doom, Ultron, whatever. You got a lot of stuff going for it. Like, it's a strong deck. Don't get me wrong. So I guess we got to talk about Thena again. I feel like she's been a topic on every single one of these. Are we at the point where we would be comfortable with Athena nerf? Because I actually feel like right now, I am less confident in her than I
I think
was
it's not
before the
needed.
patch.
Yeah.
Where go
Mm.
elaborate on that?
Yeah. Okay. So I think I can speak with a lot of certainty this week. Like, okay, normally I speak with certainty, yes, but I speak with even more certainty right now, right? But like, after testing quite a bit, I realized that Tina is like my third choice when it comes to good decks. It's not even the second, by the way. We keep talking about it being like 5 good Tina decks, right? But like,
Yeah.
I always look at Arishem first because of just the nature of like my preference, and also that Arishem is like just powerful because of energy cheat, right? It still can run oppressive cards. Arishem is like, to me, the first thing I look at. The second thing I look at is actually like, I look at wombo combo stuff. I look at like oppressive decks like Sandman, because like I look at stuff that like can do less but output a lot. Like you don't really need to do a lot of things. Less 2-card combos, just individual cards that are insane, like Sandman, Ultron, or whatever. Then I look at the Tina decks. So I feel like Tina decks may have been pushed down to like third place, but it's like a very strong third place. There's like a lot of good Tina decks still, right? I've seen. I mean, we don't need to explain Tina decks. There's like so many right now.
I
The move
actually
one is
hold
the.
on. I want to
Do we
stop you
not?
there. Yeah, I actually don't think there are. I think there's 2. It's the move
Okay,
one
fine. That's two.
and then the
The move
Dark
on.
Hawk one. And that's it. I haven't seen the other ones.
The clock one is okay.
I haven't seen the other ones. They don't seem to exist that much. Like, no one's
Okay,
playing the
okay.
Mockingbird one anymore. I don't know
Why
I
is
don't
no
know what
one playing the
happened.
Mockingbird one though?
Because
I think that
it's
one is
good
good.
in mirrors, but it's not like there aren't
So it's not
enough.
enough mirrors
Yeah,
basically.
it's
Okay,
weird.
okay.
And so it's kind of just like you have the stock one,
Makes
which is the
sense.
move one, and then if you really want to beat the crap out of Arishem, you can play Darkhawk. If you really want to beat the mirror, you can
Mm.
play Mockingbird. But most people, like, the metagame is just open enough that there's not a lot of incentive to do either of those things.
Yeah, I mean, okay, the move one is so weird to me though. Like the thing is, it's such a good like standard like
Yeah.
consistent deck. Like you probably never break with the move deck. It's just gonna draw well, right? But every time I see the move one, then I see like the things that other people are doing. They're playing freaking Phoenix Force Tribunal. Then they're playing like Sandman Ultron. Like the move one just feels fair. Like it's gonna beat up on decks, but like is it gonna beat up on like the powerful decks, like I feel like there's so many powerful things to do that the move on is just very fair. Not to say that fair is bad. Like if you just curve perfectly and then you shank them, it's probably gonna work out most of the time. But like there's not a lot of things to shank in the meta right now anyway, I feel so.
I
A
find
bit not
it
too high on that.
I find it very hard to believe that you're ever unfavored into Arishem with a Cassandra Nova Shang deck that is built around Thena.
Mm.
I find it very hard to believe that you're actually unfavored into Arishem with that. Like, I
I
get
think
that
it's
people are cutting Cassandra Nova from the move deck. I think that's a huge mistake because then you
yeah, I
might
think it's a
actually
mistake
not
as
be.
well.
But, like, once you have that in the deck, I feel like you are massively favored into most Arishem stuff.
I think it's really just the Cassandra Nova though. But like without the Cassandra Nova, I think the rest of the deck puts out way less points than an Arishem. So I feel like
Yeah,
Cassandra Nova might deal with one
well,
location and then,
that's why I said Nova and
you know.
Shang. Because you
Mm,
need them both in order to. But once you have them
true.
both, you're just like, oh, they're dead. I'm winning two locations. That's what
True,
the
that's
game is
true.
about.
That's true. Maybe you can even throw in like some Appsman thing in like that deck as well. Like,
I,
is there other Appsman targets in that? I'm trying to figure out if there are there even Appsman targets in the deck other than technically Gwenpool is a target, but it's a very slow target.
technically, Shang-Chi
Yeah.
is a target. But again, it's the
But
same
you
issue.
never need
Yeah.
more than one Shang, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so sell me on Arishem right now. Because I personally feel like I am good into Arishem with basically every deck we've talked about other than Sandman. And even sometimes you have like Sandman draws where you're just like, Cassandra Nova absorbing man and it doesn't really matter that
Mm.
you're a Sandman deck and they should be better than you. Just beat them. Where are you at with this deck? Because I know it's still strong, but like, honestly, it does not feel like it's oppressive in a meaningful way anymore. Like it's good, it's a tier 1 deck, but it's not like what it was to me.
So this is the funny part, the super funny part. Firstly, I'm like so anti the people that say Arish. Okay, not anti the people, but like I'm like so not on the train of like needing to nerf Arishem to the ground or like getting rid of the card. Like I know there's some people on Twitter going crazy about like the whole like Arishem is just bad for the game, blah 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 blah. I'm not in that camp. But I also really think that like Arishem is actually way better. I think it's way better than what people think it is right now also because of like how should I put it? I don't know how to explain. Like every time I play Arishem, I feel like I'm doing so many overpower and unfair things compared to like every other deck. Like I play Arishem for half an hour, I swap to another deck for another half an hour, and just like, why do I have so little energy, man? Like it just feels like I can play Loki on two, I can play Coulson on
Right.
two, and then that kind of thing. It's like being able to do that, being able to do blob on five, and then they snap you, and then like, all right, that's a shank time to leave. But you can blob on five and decide thereafter. Like I feel like the energy cheat is so strong. The fact that you get guaranteed everything you play on curve is just bigger than your opponent on average. I think that's something that Arishem really has going for it. And of course, you can draw bad with Arishem. That's the point of the random cards in the deck, right? But like, I don't know, man. I just cannot seem to feel like there is any deck that keeps up with the tempo of Arishem. It's like literally any random card that you can play on curve, you play it on curve, and it's probably gonna be bigger than your opponent. Okay, other than Cassandra Nova, your opponent's Cassandra Nova is always gonna be bigger than your card, correct? But like other than that, I feel like every other card is just huge, right? Like it's just play a pile of stats. And to me, it's really just all about a pile of stats. You play bigger piles of stats over 6 turns than your opponent, and then you win. I don't think I can explain it any better than that, to be honest.
I want to talk about Loki a little bit
Okay.
because I see a lot of people saying Loki got buffed, and I don't really think
Nah,
that's true. I think it's more
it's
that
not.
like it stands out by comparison now
Yes.
because everything else that was a snap condition in Arishem got nerfed. Like your previous
Mm-hmm.
snap conditions in the deck were early Loki, early Doc Ock, early Leech, and now you don't have early Doc Ock, you don't have early Leech, and the only one that's left is early Loki, and that's your like main snap condition now. And I think people feel
Mm-hmm.
like it's more oppressive because they're getting like turn 1, turn 2 snapped, and it's like, yeah, of course you are. You're like
It's the Thanos
that's when
snap.
it
It's the
happened.
Thanos snap.
Yes, it's the
Yeah.
Thanos Mind Stone snap, right? Like it's interesting. I think I don't. It might like I'm very iffy on this. It might be better than old Loki in the deck. I don't think it is though. Like,
Okay, the way I play the deck, I think it's better than old Loki in
interesting.
Arishem.
Okay.
Okay, it's not a, it's for sure a worse card. Don't get me. I think in a vacuum, it's definitely a worse card in general. But like because the thing is like this Loki card, I never really liked slamming Loki like in the old deck anyway. But like in this one, right? Like if I get to play it on turn 2. I have enough time to draw through the deck to like get the discounter cards from my opponent to pair them with what I have in my hand to formulate a game plan. Okay, but like I want to talk a bit about like why this Loki is actually just strictly a worse card than the previous one. It's
Hmm.
because doesn't mean that you Loki early now, you like and get discounted cards from your opponents. That doesn't mean that you just win. If your opponent's cards are too low in cost in general, by the way, you only draw one card a turn.
Yeah.
And if your opponent is playing like many ones and twos and threes, all your subsequent draws, right? Like it's gonna be like one cost cards, two cost cards, three cost cards, because it's all discounted. And it's like not the kind of draws you want, you know. You want like the big cards. You want to draw a blob and play it on turn 5. But if your opponent's deck is just like, I don't know, a bunch of like Silk, a bunch of like Nightcrawlers, a bunch of Angelas, and even if those cost less, it's like you draw a one cost Angela on turn 4. Are you really very happy about that? Like you're not actually that happy about that. So Loki is actually not great versus like every like deck right now. You know, it's only good versus it's definitely good versus the stuff that runs a lot of 5s and 4s and 6s. That's for sure. But like the stuff that runs a ton of 1s and 2s and 3s, you probably make your draws worse in general.
I think also in Arishem, you're already playing such a dice roll with whatever card you draw that it's like,
Yep.
I'll replace my deck. I don't care. It probably sucks anyway. Like, if
Yeah.
50% of my deck is terrible, I'll be fine if I replace it with your deck, of which presumably less than 50% is terrible. Lamby suggested we have a Juggernaut section on here. I almost feel like this is like a section that's like a week or two late because now Ultron is everywhere. But
Mhm.
Juggernaut is a card that I think a lot of top players just really, really love. That, like, whenever you
Yes.
look at the statistics, it always has, like, a 50% win rate or whatever, but he's always in every deck that, like, a top player put. Like, top players are so much more
Yeah.
likely to love Juggernaut than basically anyone else. And I think that's, like, a fun and unique thing to point out. Juggernaut is a card that guarantees wins in ways that very few other cards in Marvel Snap can, and he creates cube equity when unexpected that is basically unparalleled. Effectively a 3 mana old Alioth, extremely, extremely strong when he is unexpected. The issue is, I think a lot of decks running Juggernaut now, it's like, all right, well, okay, you're playing the Thena deck, so I'm gonna get Juggernauted. I guess I'll just try to play around that now. And you can do that. You can fill up your lanes. You can set up situations where it doesn't matter if you get Juggernauted. You can play Captain Marvel. You can play Doctor Doom. There are things you can really do to actually deal with the guy. So, Lamby, what is it that you wanted to dive into about Juggernaut?
Yeah, okay, so this is like specifically a few things that I want to dive into. So firstly, yes, Juggernaut is like a one week or 2 weeks late like as a topic because people have been running it like for a while already, right? And they found success with it. And the comment you made about the top player thing was actually what I wanted to talk about. I feel
Mm,
like Juggernaut's success a lot of the time. Okay, so firstly, Juggernaut is one of those like deterministic win conditions. Like we know that people like these kind of things like Cannonball Profex in the past. This is not like this is a more difficult deterministic win condition to set up because I feel like you have to have things in the right places and then you need to play your Juggernaut in the right places as well. But one thing I've realized a lot of top players do that I've noticed myself is that it's not really just a turn 6 GG card. Like a lot of top players, they take this 33 or 50-50 thing with the Juggernaut on curve. Like
mm-hmm.
they know you're gonna play the Hope Summers here. They know you're gonna play the Thena here. They know you're gonna play your Angela here. Then they will Juggernaut on curve to just like remove a bunch of like potential stats or like mana ramp or something like that. I see a lot of top players, they use the Juggernaut on curve because the problem with Juggernaut is like if you think of using it as like an end game card, right? You're like holding a card that may or may not be useful. But if you're good at using the Juggernaut on curve to stop the best possible play on that turn, then I think that's a very good way to use Juggernaut. So one of the reasons why I didn't really like Juggernaut in the past is because like I always felt like it was one of those cards that like I had to like I had to hold the card, you know. But then if the more I looked at it, the more I feel like if I can play this card effectively on curve, like you just like need to adjust your mindset to predict like what do you think is the best thing to do on curve, and does the Juggernaut hurt that? If it does, and you predict properly, it's probably gonna hurt their game plan a lot. Like the easy ones are always like after they play a Hope Summers, then yeah, you Juggernaut their location, right? But like there's a few very insane ones whereby like I've Juggernauted like stuff into an Angelo location because I know they want to play only one card there. this turn. So I've Juggernauted stuff into the Angelo location, so they can't play Kitty, they can't play Jeff there in the future and stuff like that. It's kind of interesting. So yeah, Juggernaut guys. Or as much as it's like not anything new as a card, I do feel like playing the card properly does get you better results.
I'm gonna push back just a little bit because I don't want anyone watching this to get the wrong idea. Juggernaut is still mostly a turn 6 card. Like we should
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
be
yeah,
clear
yeah,
about that because like, I don't want to
yeah,
see
yeah,
like
yeah.
an epidemic of people watching this video and being like, I'm playing Juggernaut on curve. Lamby told me to. Stop it. It's still
No, no,
mostly a
no, no,
turn
no,
6
no, no.
card.
I don't
Like,
think it's like a strict like yeah,
yeah,
no, no, no.
like
That's
you
not how it works.
can play it earlier, and it's good that people are finding ways to do that. But please remember that it is still mostly going to be a turn 6 card.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just saying that like you can find mileage out of like not
Mhm.
holding onto a card, you know. One of the worst cards that like I mean this one is more like you kind of have to, and that's why I don't like the card as well. But the one of the cards that you kind of like must hold, and there's like no way it's that great on curve is like Shadow King, if you think
Yeah,
about it. Shadow King is one of those cards whereby it really can get stuck forever in your hand sometimes, right? So Juggernaut I feel like suffers a bit from that, but at least I think on curve sometimes it can do some stuff as well.
I think a lot of what I didn't like about previous Juggernaut builds was that they also had Sage, and those are basically the same card.
Oh yeah.
Like they're basically just like,
True,
oh yeah,
true.
I'm playing this on this. This is a final turn card. That's it. And so you're sitting there with like your Thena, and you're like, I don't have a 3-drop to play on 4 because I
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
hold
yeah.
both of them until turn 6. It's definitely a thing.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point, right? Like Tina decks want to play two cards for
Mhm.
sure, right? Every turn. And if you're holding your Juggernaut forever, then you might not be playing two cards,
Mhm.
and that might be a problem.
Finally, I have not noticed the comments we've been getting. Lamby, he's washed. He's washed. He's washed series now. Lamby, would you care to tell them
Uh,
what just happened before we recorded the video?
Okay, so exactly right before we recorded a video, right? I just played in a tournament. Fun fact, it's called Snap Masters 3. It wasn't really super like well publicized and all whatever, but like I played in it. I played in it, and you let me just list the people in this tournament. You probably heard of them before. There's Torikun, there's Browdy, there's Sanutora, W, Desmond, Johnson. Do I need to list more? I don't
Pretty
have to,
good.
right? Like basically all these names are top tier players. Like it was like sponsored by Pulse Glazer. So Pulse Glazer is very big on like the competitive scene in Marvel Snap. So shout out to Pulse Glazer as well. Yeah, so I played in this tournament of like every single player was good. And fun fact, I finished in the semifinals. I got knocked out in like the
Top
semifinals. So
4, to be clear.
top four, yes. Maybe Olambi would have won, maybe. But anyway,
Washed.
okay,
Washed.
maybe.
Didn't
Yeah, no,
win.
but this is just a topic to say that like I don't think as much as yes, there's probably about like every week there's like new locations that I don't understand or don't know because I play the game a little bit less. But like you cannot forget how to play Marvel Snap, guys. You just cannot. So this is just it just happened to be like right before we recorded. I
Yeah.
finished in the semifinals, so we just wanted to add a topic in here. But no, don't get me wrong. I am yes factually like
Factually washed.
unsure of more interactions than I used to be. Yes. But I do not. I promise you, it's impossible that I forget how to play Marvel Snap, guys.
Yeah.
Actually, that's all. That's all.
That's it.
I cannot forget how to play this game, guys. Come on,
It.
no shot.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for making it through that video. I've been KM Best. He is no longer Washed series, and we will see you in the next one. Lamby, take us out of here.
Thank you so much for being here, guys. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you guys on my channel with the next one. Like, comment, subscribe. Bye bye.